I went to school, Rhode Island School of Design in Providence, which was a pretty lucky thing. I really wanted to go to Cooper Union, but I didn't get in. And you know, to leave the city a little bit was really important for me to learn how to like spend time with making art, you know, because I think in the city I would have been a lot more distracted. Anyways, I would come down and visit Ryan McGinley, who I grew up with in Jersey, skateboarding, and so I would always stay with him. Around that time is when I met Dash, who was really just a graffiti writer, you know, and we just rolled around with this graffiti crew called Iraq, like Ryan and I. And Dash was, you know, if I was 19, he was like 16 at the time or something like that, so pretty young. I think like Ryan, Dash, and I are the work is very different, you know, and but we had a major influence on each other, both personally and, you know, professionally or whatever. And we were really like running wild, you know, like really, truly running wild. And we all spent like a lot of time just like with shutting the world out, you know, like just in our own places together, not worried about anything else. It's like we all really were always, or like when it became appropriate, like even for Dash, like very rigorous about our work, you know? He really was like one of these guys who lived his art, you know, and like his character was like his creation. I made a sculpture of Dash's wall, which was like, wasn't a collaboration, but was really like basically at a point where before Dash had started making objects really, he was like more kind of like saw what Ryan was doing and was really intrigued by like essentially just documenting his own life and making things out of his own life. But he hadn't taken that leap to say like, it doesn't matter, it's not like to take a photograph of a scene is maybe no different than to just take the stuff that's in the corner of that same scene and you know, glue it together, right? Eventually, you know, we got to do the nest together, and we did those things together. We lived through them, you know, we did them. And, you know, Dash documented them, the ones that we did in hotels and in wherever as we traveled. But we took a road trip once or like the first time together. And really just like, you know, you're in the middle of nowhere in America, and we want to find the same energy that we're accustomed to, you know, and so it's like we have to create it ourselves. And I think Dash had done one in Tijuana in Mexico or something. He had some story about like a hamster nest, you know, and so you turn a room into a hamster cage because you tear up phone books, because that's what they put in hamster cages, you know, torn up phone books to soak up the hamster piss or whatever. And so yeah, so we just started doing it, and it's like, you know, we destroyed the rooms, but in our heads it was about like, oh, we're not really actually hurting anything, we're not making it hard for anybody because it's just torn up. I mean, like then we'd break everything and everything else would get torn up, but like it was like there was some sort of, and for us it was, you know, because it wasn't a public performance, you know, it wasn't for an audience. It was really just about our, it was like how we dialogued almost, and it was like how we were affectionate almost, you know, it was about our relationship, you know. So when Jeffrey Deitch approached us about doing it in his space, we were pretty skeptical of it, you know, so we almost didn't do it, you know. He approached us and we were like, and then Dash and I talked a lot about it, and then I kind of sat down with Jeffrey and, you know, kind of talked about some parameters, and basically we just like, you know, the only way it could work is if his gallery was our gallery, you know what I mean? If it was like not his, if it was ours. And so he gave us the keys, you know, for a week we lived in there basically, you know, and it, you know, it's like one of these things that I'll cherish, being able to like created that situation with him. You know, I remember the first night. Jeffrey helped us get interns, and so we still have pictures of like 20 kids shredding phone books, but the space is really big, you know? And so we did that, but Jeffrey found this truck that comes to, it comes to like big offices, you know, businesses, like it'll go to JP Morgan or whatever, you know, like, and they'll bring out all their documents that they need shredded once a month. And so it's a huge shredding machine, and so it came and shredded like 20,000 phone books in an afternoon. And so then we put those all in. And what ended up happening actually is like the night we had the opening night was like some of our friends played music, and maybe, you know, it was pretty limited, like who we invited. It wasn't like it wasn't a public opening, you know. And so maybe there was 100 people in there, but it was so disgusting the next day that like the girls in the gallery, like, we're gonna have to spend the next month in there, and it was like rotten. You know what I mean? Like people were pissing in it and just like beer and, you know, whatever.
There's some people who think we should just leave this open permanently. You know, like the Walter D. Maria birth room on Worcester Street. We should keep this as the New York Dirt Room.
So that's the big collaboration. There's, I'm sure, lots of little bits and pieces that we also kind of made together. I don't know, to take this question too seriously, it's gonna make me like, really emotional, but Dash died in 2009. I don't know, we had a special connection that like was very intimate, you know? But there was like a clarity in losing him that gave me. Yeah, artistically it's definitely, I've made a lot of work that was like specifically about our relationship. The show at Gagosian, the 24th Street in 2010, it was called Poetry. And, you know, it was a lot that even that sentiment in the title was about that coming out of that year from his death, you know. And yeah, it was a simple show, you know. There was just a few works in it. You walked into 24th Street, and you were immediately confronted by a large brick wall that was essentially, it looked like it was freestanding. From the front, you were just looking at a big brick wall, and from the back, there were some kind of like support beams holding it up. But it was a pretty aggressive piece and a pretty minimal piece, you know. And basically, once you got around that, on the other side of it, there was a series of motorcycles that were knocked over each other. So there were 13 bikes like top dominoed over each other. And behind the motorcycles on a wall was a painting of it was like the top of a counter where all these bottles were kind of empty bottles were lying around. But the bottles in the painting, it was a really large painting, bigger than this. So the bottles were person-sized bottles. And the painting, you know, like this is like the silliest thing to talk about, and I've almost avoided it until now. But it just is a fact. Like I started it, like before Dash's death, you know, and I finished it, afterwards. And my lifestyle changed a lot in that time, and my relationship to everything did, you know. And so to a painting of like a bunch of empty bottles on a table is like a different thing for me, you know. It did kind of become this like icon for that moment of my life. But so to have the opportunity to like deal with the domino effect in front of it as a possible circumstance in reality, you know, like a physically dominoing. And so just that play of objects, you know, and corresponding to the bottles and the fragility of the bottles. I don't know, there was a dialogue that started, that invented itself there, really. Next to that was a giant skateboard ramp that I had basically built inside a Gagosian gallery and invited my friends to come and skate on. And then we kind of took it back apart and flipped it upside down and put it back together. So it was like a bridge or like a shelter, you know? And on either side of those was a really large gum painting. And then kind of hidden behind those was the first really large-scale confetti painting. The ceiling of the skate ramp, which you could stand under, was, you know, just pretty close to your head. And all of the marks from the skate wheels, these like skid marks, were all over it, which, you know, more or less like coordinated to the confetti marks. The word kind of came from this it was like I had rediscovered life, you know? It's like I had forgot about life for so long. And in that year, I rediscovered it. And poetry I was kind of using as this like as almost like a miracle or like magic, you know. And so like it's really like the poetry in life. I'm a more liked son than I used to be, for sure. But we'll see.